By show of hands, if you're a member of this parish, would you please raise your hand? Over the years, we have endeavored to serve beyond the parish, into the Houston community, and as Russ said, eventually into the entire city, the state, and the nation. And the parishioners who are here, I want to extend a great debt of gratitude for your vote and your decision to build the Hope and Healing Center and Institute. It has been a privilege to be a part of the founding of it and its continuation to serve the community. I want to ask a special prayer from all of you for our wonderful honorary chairs, Linda and Jim McInvale, and their wonderful daughter, Elizabeth. You'll hear more from Jim and Elizabeth in a little while. And my deepest appreciation to Liz and Matt Rotan for creating this wonderful event. You guys were wonderful to work with. And I've passed on, they said, don't give us any gifts, and I've just passed on a gift to them. I don't do this job alone, and in fact, I'm not even sure I'm the most important person in the building. I take that back, I'm not. I have an incredible staff. Would my staff please stand? Beth Woodman, Carol Deason, Heather Humphrey, and Liz Crockett. Give them a big round. They are consummate professionals, and they are a joy to work with. I mean it. Please help me acknowledge and recognize the members of our board of directors. If you're a member of the board of directors, would you please stand and be acknowledged? They have been incredibly visionary and supportive since our founding 2.5 years ago. And I can't believe that a group of wise men and women would turn a facility like that over to me, but it's been, sure has been fun. I'd also like to welcome our past two Chrysalis awardees, Mrs. Susan Baker and Mrs. Sidney Faust. Please stand and be acknowledged. Both of these amazing women continue to do great work for our community. In fact, we just returned from the Squirrel Creek Ranch in Dehanes, Texas, where Sydney and her husband Don had started the family retreat for children from the Cancer Center, and that was retreat number 61. So Sydney, thank you for that pleasure. And my special congratulations to Elizabeth McInvale Segelski, although professionally she goes by Elizabeth McInvale. She will receive this year's Chrysalis Award. Over the past few years, Elizabeth has accomplished much. She has continued to tell her powerful story of her recovery from obsessive compulsive disorder. She received her master's degree. She's gotten married. She got her doctoral degree. She founded her own nonprofit foundation, and no doubt, when she's in town, she's helped out at the store. So her story is amazing, inspiring, and it's one of courage, hope, and healing. Elizabeth, we're proud to have you as our speaker today. Last and certainly not least, would all of our luncheon volunteers please raise your hands and be acknowledged. Thank you all so much. We completed our first full year of operation from January 1, 2013 through December 31st, and that year was successful by multiple measures. Development goals were met and included grants, donations, and special events like this. Programs, large, medium, and small, were well received with greater than 95% measured satisfaction. Partnership programs were particularly well received and aided our marketing and our awareness in the community. Contacts for assessment and referrals increased throughout the year and were handled effectively by our staff and by an outstanding group of community therapists. Support groups were effectively served and now number 24 and growing. Facility utilization by outside organizations increased during the year, aiding our community awareness as well. We have served persons from over 100 zip codes in our community, and we have had over 20,000 people come through the door of the Center for Health and Programs. All health and all Hope and Healing Center staff positions are now filled by the excellent staff I introduced. They're all working closely together as a team. Areas for further effort in 2015 will include the selection of a new executive director, as I will retire at the end of this year. Time for me to go sailing, I think. Additionally, we've now fully launched the Hope and Healing Institute. The Hope and Healing Institute is near and dear to my heart, coming from 40 years as on the faculty and a member of the administration at Baylor College of Medicine. I really like fellowship programs where experts get to create best practices, and that's what the Institute has become. It's a place for experts to develop and publish academic materials, programs, workshops, and lectures to help us all improve our lives. We currently have 4 Hope and Healing Institute fellows, and they're currently here and in residence. They're very productive and will provide significant new programs this year. Clearly, this unique fellowship program is working well, and it must become an increasing area of emphasis. The Institute will track outcome data and provide rigorous evaluation of what works best to keep us healthy, whole, and hopeful. Now, rather than me telling you about these amazing fellows, or at least 3 of them, please enjoy the following video. Nick? Those 3 remarkable women have been developing the programs you heard about, and it has just been exceptional to have them here. We have room for 8 fellowships at the Hope and Healing Institute. I'm proud to say we just appointed our 4th fellow, Reverend Bill Wigmore. Would you please stand? We have 2 Methodists and a Baptist currently as fellows. We brought in an Episcopalian to get a little bit of a balance. Bill is developing a wonderful program that I've actually been a small part of, a beneficiary of, to enrich the practice of spirituality in all forms of personal recovery. Bill, we welcome you to the Hope and Healing Institute. And last, I want to thank all our donors and supporters. Their names have been part of the slideshow and our slide presentation. We're an independent 501c3, and we raise our money from foundations, contributions, and luncheons like this. So all of you have contributed greatly to the operations at both the center and the Institute, and for this, we're heartfelt and gracious to have you do that. Now, would Elizabeth and Jim please join me on the award for the Chrysalis presentation on the stage? The Chrysalis is the chamber of transformation in which the butterfly, the lowly little plain old butterfly, transforms itself into the magnificent monarch. And we think it's a very fitting symbol for this luncheon and for the work we do at the Hope and Healing Center and Institute. Clearly, the story you're about to hear is a remarkable one of transformation. And Elizabeth, we are proud to recognize you as the 3rd annual Chrysalis awardee. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
And now I'll exit the stage and let Dad take over.
Thank you, Scott, for having us here today. Thanks to Liz and Matt for chairing this wonderful luncheon. Thanks to Reverend Levinson and the entire St. Martin's Parish community for helping the least, last, and lost in our society. As I watched on the slide earlier, come out to hope, come out to healing. So many people in our city, state, and nation need hope and healing, and that's what the Hope and Healing Institute offers. I was asked to introduce Liz today, and the question I asked myself was, how do you introduce a child who has changed your life? How do you introduce a daughter who inspires our entire family each and every day? I'd introduce a person who truly does live a life built for others. I was in Ohio the other day, where all these Amish people live. I was buying solid wood furniture made in America. I can't help myself, I'm sorry. And I saw this sign in the restaurant. The sign said, "What if all you had left tomorrow, what if all you had left tomorrow was what you thank God for today?" Well, all of us McInvales thank God for Liz every day. Liz McInvale.
Thank you. I appreciate the introductions, hard to follow. So I've heard a lot of people are excited about this talk, so I've got a lot of big shoes to fill, so I apologize in advance if I don't fill those. But I want to take you on a journey of my life. I want to take you on a journey of where I've been and where I've come to, what the past 15 years have looked like for me. And I hope that at the end of this talk, you'll begin to slightly understand the impact OCD can have on an individual and on a family and on the loved ones that are close to them. Imagine 15 years ago, a 7-year-old, young girl in her backyard at her parents' house, swimming, playing by the pool with her best friends, her sister, and just enjoying life. It's what you would imagine to see as a young individual in Texas, certainly. 4 years later, that completely changed. I never would have imagined it. I never would have understood what my life would become. All I know is that the person I was, the individual, the carefree, fun girl who was always getting in trouble and doing things I shouldn't be doing, quickly changed overnight. I woke up one morning, and all of a sudden, I was haunted by obsessions, intrusive thoughts that were unwanted intrusive thoughts, and I soon began to ritualize. Anytime I had an obsession, this ritual made me feel better. Imagine a young girl whose palms were sweating, neck was closing, heart was racing, and all of a sudden, when you wash your hands or when you ask your mom for reassurance, you feel better. Well, what do you keep doing? You keep ritualizing, and it gets worse and worse. I want to fast forward to about 2 years later when I was having a lot of trouble and really consumed by the number 666, and obviously the fear that it was a bad number, and my OCD took on in a form where any correlation of the number really triggered me and caused a lot of intrusive thoughts, a lot of rituals followed. So I found something wrong with every number. Every number, there was something wrong with it. It was a multiple of 6, or it had something to do with 6, and I couldn't stop. So I continuously would go up number and number, and I eventually stopped at the number 42. Well, that doesn't make much sense because 4 plus 2 is 6, so quickly you might say, how does that work? But it was my mom's age at the time, not to age her, since I've mentioned how long ago that was. But her age was 42, and I felt that since her age was a multiple of 6, I needed to do things in those increments because that would keep her safe, and she was living in a year where it was a bad number. So imagine, I want you to close your eyes for a second and imagine a teenage girl waking up in the morning and getting out of bed and lifting her left foot 42 times, her right foot 42 times, her left foot to take one step forward, back and forth 42 times, then her right foot. Imagine it takes an hour and a half to get to her restroom in her room. She turns the faucet on 42 times, rinses her hands off 42 times, gets 42 pumps of soap, rinses her hands back off 42 times, shuts the faucet off 42 times. But my OCD didn't stop there. It told me that should only count as one set, so I should do 42 sets of 42. As you can imagine, overnight, my life became a living nightmare. I wish I could explain to people and tell you in a quick second the way OCD makes an individual feel or the way it makes their family feel, but I can't. I think when you live it, that's when you understand it, and I'm hopeful that a lot of you will never have to experience that in this room. My life, as you can imagine, quickly became consumed by these obsessions and compulsions. Every waking minute of my life was a living nightmare. I had no desire to live, no desire to continue the way I was. And my family and friends are who I think saw that impact more than anyone else. they can attest to the stories of what it was like for me to walk from my bed to my bathroom, or my bathroom to the back door. And I wish I could tell you those were mundane, easy tasks that they should be for a teenager, but those little things, taking a 5-minute shower turned into 6 hours where I'm crying in the corner, freezing cold because the hot water has run out, and my mom's having to pull me out. I want you to get a little glimpse into my story, and I wish I could give you it all myself, but I don't think I can. I think that you need to hear from someone else who saw it from the outside perspective. So I want to ask my dad to come back up and explain what it was like for our family to see that happen quickly, and to watch their daughter fall apart in front of their eyes, to watch their daughter have no will to live, and to wonder what to do next.
As most of y'all in the room probably know, I work a lot. I work at 6006 I-45 North in Tidwell Park. So I worked till about 11 o'clock every night. I got home one night about 11 o'clock, and my wife Linda said to me, "There's something terribly wrong with Elizabeth." And me being the eternal optimist says, "Well, what is it? We'll get it fixed." She said she's got this weird disease where she washes her hands 600 or 800 times a day, and she was a competitive gymnast at Bella Caroli's. She lost 30 pounds, but she didn't have 30 pounds to lose, and she refused to go back to the high school she goes to, the public high school, Westville High School. She thinks it's contaminated, and her mother said, "I just don't know what to do." I said, "Well, we'll get it fixed." So we took Liz to multiple psychiatrists out in the north side of Houston where we lived, and they all said they'd never seen such a severe case before of obsessive-compulsive disorder, Howard Hughes disease. And they said there was no hope for this child. That they said she would be helpless for the rest of her life. They'd never seen a case that severe. Well, you know, Linda and I, by nature, are not buyers, we're sellers. And by nature, we are people of faith. So I talked to the people I knew at the Texas Medical Center, and Linda searched the internet, and we looked for a solution to this hell on earth that Liz was living through every day in her beloved sister and her mother. Linda lived upstairs with Liz for a year and a half, and it was blood-curdling to hear her screaming at her mother every night, "Mom, what did I do to deserve this? I wish I was dead," begging her mother to kill her every single night. And finally, we found this place called the Miniger Clinic that we were recommended to by the people at the Texas Medical Center. On one cold February day in 2002, on February 5th, 2 days after Liz's birthday, we had to kidnap her and take her to Miniger. And we had a guy named Mike Thornton there, who was a Navy SEAL, worked for us, and a Congressional Medal of Honor recipient. Mike was there in case Liz decided not to go. Well, sure enough, she decided not to go and ran down the street, screaming and hollering that she wasn't going to go to Miniger, and Mike had to go and tackle her and put her in the car. She cried the entire plane ride up to Kansas, telling everybody in the family that she was sorry for what she had done, when in essence she had done nothing. I remember taking her to Miniger, and we got to Kansas. It was a cold, snowy February Tuesday in Kansas. We went into Miniger, and after processing her, about an hour later, we were leaving. And forever etched in my mind will be the picture of her little face pushed up against a plate glass door like the one at the end of the hall here, screaming at her mother, "Mom, please don't leave me here," because she felt like we considered her to be an inconvenience or an interruption to our life, and we were going to leave her there at Miniger for the rest of her life to get her out of the way. Nothing could have been further from the truth, but that's what she felt. And we left her there that day, that snowy, cold day in Kansas, at Miniger.
Upon arriving at Miniger, as my dad said, it was an experience I'll never forget, one that's etched in my mind forever. I quickly turned to my sister because I thought I can swindle my way with her to get back home. And so we formed an alliance that's never been broken. I convinced her that I would try on all the clothes, I would wear different colors, I would even blow dry my hair and do things I hadn't done in years. I can remember having everybody on my side except my mom. My mom said, "We have to leave her here. This is what we have to do." As my dad said, I felt that this was their way of getting rid of me. I felt they wanted to decrease the burden I was putting on their life and drop me off at the Menninger Clinic. Why did I think this? I didn't think this because I had parents that had shown that. I thought this because I didn't believe there was any way I could get better. And I was told I could come home when I got better. So they left me that day, and I'll never forget throwing up, being sick to my stomach, and begging Menninger to let me go home. And I worked out a deal with my therapist. He said, if in 2 weeks you can meet these treatment goals and you can do the assignments we talk about, I'm going to let you go home. So I jumped on board and said, okay, let's do it. As you can imagine, little did I know that he knew getting through all my treatment goal in 2 weeks after years of battling OCD wasn't probably going to happen. But what happened is I became motivated and I trusted him enough to try what he was telling me to do. He taught me to try exposure with response prevention, try facing my fears. So for an example, try writing the number 6 on my hand and leaving it there and being okay with it and understanding, habituating so that I could learn to retrain my brain and understand that there's no true correlation. Nothing bad was going to happen to me because of these things. The day I arrived at Menninger's, a day I'll never forget, there was many people there who turned to me and said, crying with tears down their face as well, "I was as scared as you are. I've been where you are today." And I'll never forget meeting someone else with having OCD changed my life forever because I, for the first time, understood I wasn't alone. We had gone to therapists in Houston, like my dad mentioned, and everybody said, "You have obsessive compulsive disorder." And I'll never forget one of the therapists said, "Don't you feel better now that you know what you have?" And I said, "Well, not if there's not any help." I didn't understand that correlation, but I finally met people who knew what I had, but more importantly, I met people who could teach me the skills I needed to be able to manage my life forever. 3 months later was the day I was going to leave Menninger and come back home to Houston. I was scared, I was nervous. Could I implement these tools I learned at home? Could I keep up with the gains I had made there? Something I wasn't sure of and I didn't know. But one thing I can tell you is that I cried just as hard that day I left Menninger as the day I arrived. I didn't cry because I didn't want to be there and I felt that my parents were leaving me. I cried because my parents made the best decision of their life to put me in a place where I could get the help I needed, be surrounded by treatment providers who knew how to help me. And I cried because I was leaving a place that had not only changed my life forever, but that had saved my life. I wish I could tell you that when I left Menninger, I went home and I no longer had OCD, and that's why I'm standing in front of you today to tell you that I'm doing great, but that's not what happened. I came home from Menninger and I could finally do things I hadn't been able to do in years. I could take 5-minute showers, I could hang out with my friends, I could wear certain colors, I could get ready like I used to. But about a year and a half later, that changed for me. I relapsed again. What happened is that I didn't understand that they taught me those tools and I needed to apply them on my own. I was a 15-year-old girl who thought, okay, they fixed me, now I'm good. And so as you can imagine, I struggled a lot that year and a half later. My mom and we were discussing last night what it was like for me when I relapsed again, and she recalled a story that I wanted to share. I had a loft in my bedroom growing up, and so my bed was upstairs and the stairs were downstairs, and she said at this time she was staying upstairs with me, and I was struggling so much with having to go up and down the stairs and trying to get from my bed to the bathroom to ritualize and wash my hands in order to get rid of the obsessions. And she said it was about 5 in the morning, and we had spent all night going up and down the stairs, and trying to get back and forth, and I finally got a bowl of water and put soap in it and thought, let's just bring this to the bed so that maybe I can wash my hands right there and wash my face and wash the parts of my body I felt were contaminated. At the time, I thought my left arm and left leg were contaminated, and so I turned to my mom and said, I think we should just amputate my arm and leg because it would just be easier than having to deal with this. And it's funny because I can see now, thank God they didn't do that, but that really made sense to me at the time. You can't understand the magnitude of the illness, and if that would have fixed it, to me that would have made perfect sense. But my mom said it was about 6:37 at this time, and I was finally trying to get some sleep, and she said she'll never forget me turning to her and saying, "I guess I'm just not doing so good, am I, Mom?" And she said, "No, you're not." And then a few weeks later, I think, is when I went back into the Menninger Clinic again. And this time it was different. This time I went to Menninger as someone who didn't have the motivation I had the first time. I felt like treatment didn't work that great the first time if I'm back here again. But I also learned the most important thing I've ever learned in my life, which is that I might trust my therapist and I might love them and do any exposure they tell me to do. But at the end of the day, they don't wake up with me, they don't live with me, and they're not there when I'm often triggered. So I learned that I had to be my own therapist. I had to take the tools they gave me and carry them with me every day. And that's what I'm trying to do now. I quickly got back into high school and worked my way to finish as quickly as I can and get out. High school was always a trigger for me, as it is for many adolescents, OCD or not, and it was a very tough time. But I can remember the day I graduated high school and the day I walked across that high school stage. It was a surreal feeling for our family and my friends because it was something that we didn't think would ever happen. And walking across that stage taught me that although I would always live with this illness, I would always struggle with this disease, if I had some dreams, I could fight really hard to make those dreams work. And I think from that day on out, that's what I've been doing, and it's what I'll continue to do. But I'll never forget, high school graduation is something that I think a lot of us in this room take for granted. We throw a little party and we go, but it's really not, it's not a huge accomplishment the way it can be measured for some people. But for me, it was an accomplishment that showed and signified that with hard work, determination, perseverance, and faith, you really can achieve your dreams, even if you're living every day in a nightmare.
Watching Liz graduate from high school was something we didn't imagine would ever happen a couple years before. Liz then started college and wanted to find a way to help others. She became the first national spokesperson for the Obsessive Compulsive Disorder Foundation, going on television across the country saying, "What does OCD look like? It looks like me. My name is Elizabeth." The McIngvale family believes that work is the road to salvation. We also have learned that work is life's greatest therapy. Liz made becoming an advocate for people with mental illness her life's work. The goal of her life is to eliminate the stigma of mental illness. To let people know that having a mental illness is like having a cold, a cough, a heart ailment, or cancer. Because mental illness is a cruel disease, no one knows who it might strike or why. Mental illness lasts forever. It never goes away. Liz has continued to battle her OCD and has found a passion that's used as her motivation to fight her illness, and that's helping others.
So the next step in my life was to go to college, and as you can imagine, that was a struggle for me and something that is a struggle for most kids. I remember my therapist telling my mom one day that one of his biggest goals for me would be to go away to college, to live on my own. You see, my family, my friends had become my comfort zone. They had become who I relied on, but they had also become part of my OCD. As many people in this room know, a mental illness doesn't affect just the individual living with it. It affects everybody surrounding it. So I went off to college and I decided I'd become a social worker. I wanted to do for others what Menninger had done for me, but more importantly, I wanted to do what I saw my mom, my dad, my sister, my friends do for me every day since I was 12. One of the greatest social workers in my mind of all times is Mother Teresa. When you think of the work of Mother Teresa and what she did and the image she left, she taught people that humble beginnings can also be humble endings. but they can impact lives all over the world. I had a teacher at Loyola University where I went to college who actually lived with Mother Teresa for a year and slept on a cot about 10 feet away from her. And I want to share this quick story because what Mother Teresa did is what people said she shouldn't do. Mother Teresa, they worked with the dying and they worked with the sick, and one of her rules was you couldn't wear gloves. Most of us in this room, in the medical profession, or knowing what we know now about disease control, would say, oh my gosh. But Mother Teresa believed gloves served as a barrier. They took away that human touch that the dying needed. And so because of that, I have to say, I want to do what people think I shouldn't. I want to share my story. I want to teach people that it is okay to stand in front of a crowd and say, I have a mental illness. I live with this illness every day and I'm tormented by it. Why? Why do I want to do that? Because until there's a face on illnesses, people don't care about them and people don't understand them. So I want to take a quick minute to involve everybody and ask you to do something that's typically not done. But I want everyone in this room who's been affected in some manner by a mental illness to stand up. Now, those of you who aren't standing, I'd love to meet you later because I think that's pretty amazing. The point is, and you can take a seat, but I want you to understand the magnitude of mental health. It's just as strong as cancer, it's just as strong as heart disease, it's just as strong as any other medical illness. But it's something we don't talk about, it's something we aren't educated about, it's something we don't even discuss to children in the schools. Maybe if we start there, but most importantly, maybe if people are willing to tell their story, we'll be able to change one mindset at a time. I began to do my OCD work, and like my dad said, I became an advocate for mental health. Coming from a family who's pretty well known in Houston, I heard many times, over and over, why didn't you guys just get her help and not talk about it? There was no need to discuss it. There was no need to go public. And it's true, right? I didn't have to. I'd probably still be in a situation where I am today if I wasn't public. But the first email I ever received from someone saying, hearing your story, hearing what you've been through, not only changed my life and saved my life, but got me to the help I needed. Or the stories I hear about people who say, you gave me inspiration to be willing to tell my story, and now I've been able to help others. Those are the stories and those are the people for why I do my work. I don't do my work to tell you guys about my OCD and the journey I've been through, because it certainly is not that interesting. Instead, I do my work and I tell my story for the millions of people with OCD that will never get the help they deserve. For the millions of people with OCD that are trapped in basements, trapped in their home, afraid to leave, afraid to tell anybody because they don't know what's going on with them and they're scared to death. I have to say that if it weren't for my family and friends supporting me through the time, I might be in that same situation they are. So I encourage all of you who stood today and those who didn't to stand by and support the person you know with a mental illness and to work every day to get them the help they need, because it truly will save their life. My story of OCD is not a story of a cure. I wish I could tell you that, yes, I've been through what I've been through, but now I stand today as an advocate without OCD, but it's not true. I wake up every morning with the disease. I wake up every day tormented by the illness, worried about the harm I might cause to others, or something that I'm going to do wrong, or how I've hurt someone's feelings. I still struggle every day. But I know there's help available, and I know that my dreams of doing the work I want to do can outweigh those OCD struggles. I can use those as my motivation to go to therapy twice a week like I still do, to continue to do the work that I do every day. So I'm going to leave my message and let my dad come up to wrap it up, but I really want to say and let everyone in this room know that it's our job, it's my job, to give a voice to the voiceless and to continue doing the work I do, which I vow to do until the day I die, unless there becomes no more stigma associated with mental health. But all of you in this room coming to this talk, being a part of it, have helped stamp out that stigma, and for that I'm forever grateful.
Center, who we support today, and the Institute, is all about helping people overcome obstacles in their life. The Hope and Healing Center helped over 20,000 people last year, an amazing number. Liz has overcome and continues to fight against seemingly insurmountable obstacles in her life. Because of her faith, because of the support from people like her mother, her beloved sister Laura, and her friend Ashley, who are all here today. To all of her doctors, nurses, and social workers who have helped her along the way, I'm here to say thank you. You saved the life of our precious child, and there are countless more lives to be saved. Liz beat odds of 1,000,000 to 1. And with the help of great social workers and institutions like the Hope and Healing Center, countless people, thousands of people in Texas and Houston, just like her, can be helped, and their lives also can be saved. Liz is now living the true meaning of the American dream, which is to help herself by helping others through her social work. The Hope and Healing Institute helps thousands of Texans every year. I believe that this country needs more great churches like St. Martin's. I believe that St. Martin's is doing great work helping the least, last, and lost through the Hope and Healing Center. This child, who they said just a short decade ago would never finish high school, received her PhD in social work from the University of Houston just 10 days ago. Liz's story of overcoming mental illness and dealing with it every day shows that through prayer, grace, perseverance, and lots of loving, caring people, her story shows that hope and healing is possible. Please support the great work of the Hope and Healing Institute. Thank you.
Linda and Jim for sharing their powerful story about their personal journey with OCD. 7 years ago, Matt and I sought treatment for our oldest daughter, Nina, at Texas Children's Hospital to help her overcome anxiety and her need to control her environment that was bigger than anything that Matt and I could handle by ourselves. About 6 months later, I first heard Jim introduce his daughter Liz at another speaking event, and at that time, I felt the soft touch on my shoulder of divine intervention. Later that day, and at his invitation, I called Jim at Gallery Furniture to ask him more questions, and he answered every one of them. I thank you for that day, Jim and Liz. It's changed our lives. Today, Nina is a thriving, well-adjusted 16-year-old girl who enjoys fashion, friends, music, and who, like all of us, is still very much a work in progress. And on behalf of the Hope and Healing Center, I thank you all for coming here today. May you all feel the divine touch on your shoulder today so that you may pass along this experience to someone else who really needs it. Thank you.
I'd like to say three things, or make 3 points. I was asked by Scott and Matt to wrap up, and we will wrap up right on time. 3 things. The first is that Scott kind of briefly passed by it, but we would not be sitting here today and the work that has been done over the last just a little over a year had it not been for a fellow who said yes and came on board to be our founding executive director. I know that Scott's retiring, but this will not end his relationship or his work I think, with the center and the institute. But I'm so grateful that he said yes. So thank you. I'll also say that the McInvales, I have been in this business a long time. I've heard lots of sermons, talks, presentations, and that has to be one of the best I have ever heard in my life. Really. Okay, so the last thing I've been asked to do is ask you for money, but I'm going to do it in a different way than I normally do it. And as I sat and listened to Liz, I'm going to borrow your image, and I'm going to borrow Mother Teresa's. The church, and I mean the big church, not St. Martin's Church, frankly, is often known more publicly for the lines that it draws, and for putting on the gloves and putting up a fight. My boss was asked, what's the most important law? What's the most important thing? And my boss said, you will love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your strength and all your mind, and you'll love your neighbor as yourself. I believe that God built the Hope and Healing Center and is doing the work of the Hope and Healing Institute. It is a place where, to use your image, the gloves of fighting come off. And it gives us a way of reaching out beyond ourselves to people of all faiths, all backgrounds, every station in life, and offers hope and healing. It is a good place to invest in the ways that God has blessed you. My members know I'll talk to them about what goes on over there in the fall. Right now, I'm asking you, as Liz just did, to close your eyes and imagine a center where the gloves come off, where it's only known as a place that welcomes everyone and seeks to bring hope and healing to everyone that God sends its way. It cannot do that without prayers, without volunteer support, and without financial support. So you have cards on your table. You may want to take those home and think about what you can do. You may have already decided. I've seen some of you already marking down things today. They're too big. I think there's silver bowls in the back. You can drop those in there as you leave. There are volunteers around the room that'll be happy to take those as well. But if you invest in that place, you're investing in a good place that's doing good work. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you for everybody who made this possible. Thank you most especially to the McInvale family and for your good, honest work today. And thank you for your prayers and support. Let me send you off with a little blessing that comes from my boss. Let me invite you just to close your eyes for a moment. Wonderful word. It's attributed to Augustine, St. Augustine. Hated, despised a thing to flout. They drew a line that left me out, but love and I had the wit to win. We drew a circle that took them in. May we, by God's grace, find ways to draw larger and larger and larger circles in our lives, to take those around us within the loving embrace of God Almighty and the love to which He calls us. As we go from this place today, may not just His peace abound, but His love infect us in ways in which we spread that infection to all we encounter. Help us to take the gloves off and be sources of healing and hope.